Hi and welcome back to More Than a Lumpy Jumper. So we're back to Guest with Gift sessions while Bobby and I take a little break. And for our first session, I've invited back a lovely guest, Wendy Faux, who was part of an episode that Bobby and I recorded for Armed Forces Day with Sully Purnell. And because we had so much fun, I decided to see whether Wendy was available to come and talk about her favourite episode of More Than a Lumpy Jumper and to give a recommendation for a book on leadership that she thought that you all might enjoy. Now, Wendy is a very special guest because she is the brains and the talent behind the More Than a Lumpy Jumper logo, and she's also taken quite a lot of the photographs that we have used for our branding. So I'm very excited to have a chat with Wendy about authenticity and why she doesn't like the word because it's bandied around too much, but she likes the concept, and to have a chat about being a rebel. So come and join me for Guest with Gifts with Wendy Faux. How are you, my lovely?
I'm good, thank you. I'm good. Yeah, lots of travelling, lots of planning for travelling, which is even better.
I think Bobby's having the same issue, that we're all travelling around the place and trying to fit things in amongst various other commitments. So I really am grateful that you've agreed to take the time to come and talk to me about your favourite episode from More Than a Lumpy Jumper, and we'll have a little chat about that. And then we are going to just take a slightly different turn from our previous Guest with Gifts and talk about a recommendation for a book on leadership. And we can have a little chat about that too. Actually, before we start that, maybe I need to do a little bit more of an introduction because I haven't really done an introduction other than say that you're a friend of mine and you've been on before. But an introduction for anyone who might not have heard that fabulous episode. We were at Sandhurst together. And so we are the original first women who weren't Women's Royal Army Corps in the British Army. And you went and joined the Royal Artillery.
Yep.
And since then have remained in the military, and now you do amazing media stuff for the military as well as being a very, very talented photographer.
Oh, bless you. That's really kind. I have a team of very talented photographers who sort of say, yes, Mum, that's lovely. But have you considered this? Or I've just straightened it off for you and things like that. It's like, all right.
Well, do you have that problem? I have to say, do you remember Tanya Morris?
Yes.
Yeah. So I remember she looked at me and she's like, your eyes must be wonky because every single photograph you post on Facebook, even though they're lovely, they're all slightly skewish. And I had to have a little think about that. And when I looked at, she was absolutely right because she's also a very talented photographer. And all of my photographs were just slightly wonky, not enough for it to be really obvious, but just you could like after a while I was like, maybe I need to get my neck sorted as well. Maybe my head's at a slightly wrong angle.
I'm paranoid now. Absolutely. I don't put anything up unless I've really straightened it. And even now on the phone, it has that little yellow line. So, there's a line that tells you whether it's straight or not.
Do you think it's something to do with the menopause? Maybe there's some additional thing with the menopause that makes your eyes go slightly wrong. I don't know. Anyway.
Nothing to do with alcohol.
I resemble that remark. It's my vision of life and that everything is slightly out of balance. And on that note, More Than a Lumpy Jumper. You were an early starter with More Than a Lumpy Jumper. And other than us telling you had to listen to it, was there any other reason why you listened to it?
Well, because I was curious. Because of the photographs we did, and we had a bit of a laugh, didn't we, with those first photographs and things. No, but so I think that it's really the reason for listening is because we had the same or similar that sort of Sandhurst thing is almost like when I say a levelling off, it sort of brings people from all sorts of different backgrounds together. You go through the same training and then you come out as leaders. The podcast is about what you've both done it can apply to any of us, anybody, not just people who've served in the army or whatever else. It can apply to anybody who has been in a role, is looking for a role, or wants to understand a bit more why perhaps people in the workplace or around them are doing things, and they want to understand a bit more about that sort of, well, life skills. It's not just about leadership and management. It's about, the one about the face. I have to put my head in my hands, and my children tell me off. They just sort of do a hand signal now, and it's just like, oh, okay. Which is like, the face is saying it. Just look away. Maybe I should take up wearing hats a bit more, wide-brimmed hats. So that
Sunglasses as well help.
Yes. So there's so much in there. And again, I've heard Bobby tell people off, no, you can't choose more than one. But one of the interesting things was going back and choosing the one and listening, you then see how you've created the series, and it's just fascinating. I don't know if it's planned or not, but it looks
definitely planned. Bobby does more planning than me. I think at the beginning it was very much just random ideas that popped into our heads, but as we've gone along, definitely there has been a little bit more consideration into sort of curating some of the ideas in little groups, and also we've been massively helped by friends and listeners who've given us ideas as well. So, kudos to everyone who everyone, it's like a village has helped create it.
It's brilliant. I love it.
Sure. Always lovely to hear nice things. So, bearing in mind Bobby's telling off, because she's quite scary when she tells you off. And she just so you came up with one.
And it was one of the first ones, I think, being an authentic leader. Now, I hate the word authentic as such.
Why? Why do you hate the word authentic?
Well, because it's being overused.
Oh,
and I've literally been on this weekend an online screenwriters course, and it was all about being an authentic voice, and it's just like, what do you actually mean by that? And it's something I haven't unpacked yet because I've been traveling today, but it's something that I want to go back into.
What does that mean in terms of leadership? So I kind of hope you're about to say that episode we did a little bit better than just throwing a word out into the...
No. And some bits made me laugh as well, because Bobby talked about putting on a suit. And sorry, I'm laughing at my own story, and I shouldn't do really, but it reminded me, I was over in Germany, I was doing the media for the army, and it was a homecoming, and Parliament used to have a greet, so the all-party parliamentary group used to greet a number of soldiers, representation or of the unit that had just deployed. And so they would march around Parliament Square and go into Parliament, and then they'd have a reception there. And so I was part of the planning team, and we had to fly to London. Now, bearing in mind, I'd lived in Germany for quite a number of years, and now fashion is slightly different to London. So I'd gone out and I'd bought a pink linen suit, which I thought was really smart. And in Germany, I'd worn it to a couple of fancy meetings. It was fine until I walked into Parliament in London. And I was just like, oh, I think I misjudged this one. And then I was trying desperately to sort of bring that authentic self. This is me. This is who I am. And I realized that it wasn't really washing, because everyone was just looking at me going, what? Anyway, so I haven't worn a pink suit into London since. So I'd like to think a colourful person. You can interpret that how you like if you know me. And so yeah, but that fit with Bobby and her suit made me laugh a lot. And then you said about working to your values and not fitting into the box. And for me, that was really interesting, about being clear about your values. And I think that is so, so, so important in whatever you're doing in life, is that if you have values and you have your own standards, it's not just corporate ones, your own beliefs, your own integrity, then stick to it, because that is what will follow you around. These people, the people come in and out of your life, but what will stay with you is what you believe in and how you respond to situations and how you can stay true to yourself. I think
it's a really, really important point, because it becomes a compass, doesn't it? Because it helps you if you've already got that very firm idea of what's right and wrong or what your values are, then whatever life throws at you, it's a bit like drills training, doing drills, that when the shit hits the fan, or as my current boss says, the mango hits the fan, because she's more of a lady than I am. But when the mango hits the fan, that you don't have to think about it. You just know. It's sort of innate, it's ingrained. And so it's a lot easier to make decisions in really difficult or flexible or, fast moving situations if you already have a very firm idea of where you are. I think it took me a long time. I think when I was younger, I really struggled with that. I don't really think I had a very firm idea of what I believed in. And weirdly, in many cases, I think that for women particularly, who are often trying to fit in, or we kind of fit to whatever, other people want, and we are people pleasing, that actually for many women, and I think I rant about this a little bit, this crone thing, when we get to become older and we stop giving a shit about fitting in and people pleasing. And actually, I think certainly for me, it's really taken me that long to be really clear about what I will and will not put up with, what my arcs are of where my intolerances are, what I accept, what I don't accept. And I think I found it very liberating, because I stopped worrying about it. I know what I will and will not do, what my limits are, and I don't have to worry about any of that now. Whereas I spent quite a lot of my younger self being quite anxious about whether I was doing the right thing, whether people would like me. And I kind of see that with young people, but particularly young women now, really struggling with this anxiety that I think is part of that. And, the only thing I can say to them is, it'll get better when you have the menopause.
But just going back, so, now we're hopping around. This is my brain now going, but I think authentic of being true to yourself. And I'll give you an example. So again, I was on a rear party, and the guys had deployed, and I was put in as, well, I was in the post of 2IC, but I was told by the CEO that I wasn't to do anything military, that I was just to be party planner. I was like, okay, I can do that. But one of the things I did was I stood in front of the soldiers who were on rear party on a Wednesday afternoon, and we were supposed to do sports and things. And I started to sort of give them what I would call a male speech. And I sort of started to say, and you're going to do this, and you're going to do that, and everything else. And these guys looked at me as if to say, what the fuck? I don't give a shit what you're going to say. And I went home and I thought, God, that wasn't me. That wasn't me talking. That was me thinking that that's who they thought they should be listening to, type thing. And that's how other people talk to soldiers. And I got really upset about the fact that I'd done that. And so I went away and thought, what would I do? And who are these soldiers? And of course, because rear parties are people who can't deploy for whatever reason, family reasons, people who want to deploy but can't deploy, and people who are injured, probably from something that happened in a previous deployment, because this is in the middle of that sort of the Afghanistan period. And I thought, you're being a real dickball. So Wednesday afternoons, we did archery, we did ice skating, we did ice hockey,
Really?
did painting. I spoke to a nappy, and I went out and bought a whole load of paints and canvases. And I'd spoken to the nappy manager, Nicole, and she was just amazing. And I said, can we take down all of these sort of corporate images, and whatever the soldiers produce, I want to put up on the wall.
Oh,
They need to own it.
lovely.
And so the soldiers came in, and they just saw these blank canvases and this paint. They're like, oh, no, I can't do this. I don't want to, And I said, right, okay. I will show you where it's going to go on the wall of what I'm going to do. So I had red, blue, and yellow paint. And I stood on a bar stool, and I did my version of a Jackson Pollock.
With paint.
With paint all over the place. And I said, there you go, that's mine. When it's dry, it'll go up. And they went, oh, could you better than that? I said, oh, well, go on, Mum. And I just left them, and I said to Nicole, if there's an issue, phone me, but I don't want to be there.
Yeah.
I'll let them get on with it. And it was amazing. So we had Ghanaian soldiers who were painting from home. So they did a fishing boat with fish. We did I had spray paints outside, so some people did spray painting. And then I had a phone call at about 5 o'clock when we had to sort of tie it all up. And it was the guard room, and they said, "We heard you did some painting. We've got any spare canvases." So we took those down so they could do them, when they were off duty in the guard room. And it was just amazing. It was just brilliant. And so it got to the stage where people were going, "Oh my God, what are we doing on Wednesday afternoon?" But we loved it. And then we had organised a party, which was the first anniversary of the formation of the Rifles. And of course, the guys were deployed in Iraq at the time. And so this is February in Germany. I got a camel. We had belly dancers. One of the chefs could write Arabic. And so we had a whole load of blueies. We taught them all how to write "Hi, Dad," "Mum," whatever. "I love you lots, missing you" in Arabic. And we sent those. We had a great time. But it just was being outside the box.
So being you, which actually is...
Exactly.
I mean, there's a link also, obviously, to last week's episode, which we did on play. So there's a massive element of play there as well. But I think that, weirdly, pretty much all of our intake at Santa, pretty much all of them, and certainly the ones that are still in touch, there was a huge element of play as well as part of our, or whatever we were doing, just in order to stay sane. Pretty much training. I still remember the green beans, where we spent a lot of time dressed up in weird green thermals.
Oh my goodness. And one of the things that you said was, how do we enable people to flourish? And I think that's where I have used the arts. And because it's me, and because that is me being true to myself, it comes across. And I think that's what the element of leadership is, that if you're true to yourself, and however you want to lead, people will follow you because they know that you are being absolutely genuine. You are following a rule book, but you're doing it in your own way. And I think that is so, so important. And different people respond to different people as well, respond to different styles. I have done a lot of introspective on myself and to understand who I am as a leader, because not a lot of people like the way I do things. There's quite a few people who don't like the way that my mind works. And I've been trying to understand why it's different from anybody else. And my last boss was absolutely brilliant when I was doing the arts job. And I remember being in a meeting, being so frustrated. She's like, "Why don't people get this?" And I actually walked out. I was so, so frustrated. And he followed me out and said, "What's the problem?" I said, Why are we not moving forward? Why are we not doing this?" And he said, "Because people don't, your mind works differently to other people's." And I was like, "No, it doesn't." Yes, it does. I was like, "Oh, does it?" After I had child number 4, and I thought my brain cells were completely washed out. I went and studied, I did A-level psychology, and we did the A-level in 1 year, which was quite entertaining. But it was brilliant for understanding different theories, how the brain works, and all of this sort of thing. And I started to understand it a little bit. And we'll have to be that sort of empathetic leader as well. And just watch people and use those core skills that you have innate in yourself and ask somebody else if they're okay. You never know what's going on in people's lives. But being empathetic is something that I think I do. I watch a lot. And I think that is key to a lot of what I do. And I realised, that moment where I was bawling and shouting at soldiers, it sticks in my head as a moment, because I just thought, that's not me. And I think that's why the arts is so ingrained in me, and why I find it a useful tool. But even when I was doing an arts degree, I remember I used to interpret briefs differently. I think that I got it wrong. And I remember there was one time where we had to document movement, and people had done these beautiful drawings, and I hadn't. I'd done almost like an architect's drawing of a corner of the building, and then just did lines so that went from blue to red, which showed the direction of people, and I could record it in a minute. And it was a 1-day project that we had. I wouldn't put mine up because everyone had done these beautiful drawings of people's arms moving and all this sort of thing. And the curator is just like, yeah, but yours is more representational of how many people move through that space, direction they were going in 1 minute. But I still didn't believe in myself at that point, that it was all right to be different. And that would then lead on to the book, which is why the book that I've chosen is really important. But so Rebel Ideas by Matthew Syed. And just as Simon Sinek is to you, Matthew Syed is to me, alongside those, and Brené Brown, obviously. And he talks about, the first chapter is about the CIA and bin Laden and how they missed all the clues. And it was because of groupthink. And each chapter sort of deals with how we ignore the people who think differently, or we don't create a group. If you want to solve a problem, you can't create a group who all think the same. So when I did my Not Just a Wife exhibition, first of all, I did it, I sort of put it out to friends and said, anybody willing to help me? Because that'd be really helpful. And I'm a bit scared about doing this because I have an exhibition to put on at Rusi. And people helped me. And when I was developed, I thought, going back to that psychology A level, is that if I don't get somebody outside of my group, I am doing the like attracts like. So I'm asking my friends who will have similar traits to me, so I'm not getting the full picture of, if someone could critique it and say, I'm not getting a wide enough sample of people to show the true variety of military spouses. And so I branched out, and they were saying similar things, but for me, it was really important. And in Rebel Ideas, they talk about how, I think it's English football, and Lucy Giles, great person that she is, Colonel Lucy Giles. She was invited to go along and join the team to advise them. So the English football team got a whole load of people from different walks of life together, nothing to do with football. We're talking about teamwork and leadership and psychologists and all this sort of people to talk about it from not based on football, based on everything that goes around it. That football is the end product, is the outcome. You get a great team. And so each chapter looks at this, but it's how you can get diverse minds together to solve a situation or to come up with different ideas. And they did that in one of the units that I worked in. And the upshot was that we ended up having soldiers singing with an Estonian choir at a festival which happens every 4 years, and it's a cultural festival. And the soldiers are getting really anxious about doing the singing. And we had media coming in, and they're saying that this is really embarrassing. I'm going to get creative. My mate's going to think I'm stupid. And I turned around and I said, and we had been invited in to sing with them. And I said, it's an amazing thing to have achieved. And it's about not saying, oh, you need to have this in your village or you need to have that. It's like, what is important to you and how can we learn about it? And that's what we did. And they were singing in Old Estonian. Even the local Estonians are going, we would never sing in that. That is a really hard language. But it was brilliant from an engagement perspective. And I think that actually when they were on the day when they were singing, I think they really felt that they were part of the community. And that is what is really important. And it wasn't me, I sort of facilitated the project, but this guy, Robin White, and he is just the most ingenious advertising guy who came in to help us come up with something really different. And it was because of his diversity of thought. And we were all going, yeah, I don't know how we're going to manage this. He was like, you just have to do it. Okay, Robin. And it was brilliant to work with him because he wasn't taking no for an answer. And Victoria Preston, she's another great person as well, who again was like, okay, we've got that bit, but we can work through it this way, and this is how you communicate it. And just working with these incredibly talented people brought something different to how are we going to, we're in Taffa, we're going to be there for some time, and we need to be a part of the community. How can we do that? And it doesn't mean we have to take stands around the place with a warrior and people in green.
I love that example, those examples. And obviously the rebel sort of idea, I think, again, has come from a lot of our culture evolvers group. Bobby's recording, I'm never allowed to say it. Anyway, our great dinner club, our culture club, who are all rebels in our way and have brought lots of different perspectives. I'm a really, really great fan of this diversity of thought. And I do think that a lack of diversity of thought is something that kills problem solving. It kills leadership. It kills teams. It kills achievement. It kills innovation. I don't think you can achieve any of those things without this diversity of thought. And sometimes just bringing in a person who has got literally no background in a topic or in a space can be the difference between success and failure. Because, as a biologist, it's a bit like something that's called hybrid vigor. If you keep interbreeding, and that's why you get these pedigree dogs that are just not very healthy. But this idea of perfection, I think, sucks. And I think that actually imperfection is the thing that brings about change. Well, because exactly evolution. It's all a kind of evolution thing, and you can't have evolution, you can't have change, you can't have advances without that diversity, whether it's genetic or whether it's different ideas.
Exactly, and I think that's exactly it. It's evolution of ideas, because it's not that I've got the answer or somebody else who's thinking differently has the answer. But what it does do, there are other people who think differently in all sorts of different ways. But by bringing those people in, an idea can evolve from, it gives people permission. You come up with something completely random, and it gives people permission to think differently and not straight down the line. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, as you can start to encourage people, saying, yeah, okay, I know you want to put a submarine on top of a skyscraper. That sounds like a really good idea, but do we have to actually use a submarine, or can we use a model, or how will we get it up there? What can we do? Or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And you get people thinking and get really excited about the project as well. And then you have to have one person who brings it all back down.
Yes, of course. And then we go back to Debona's 6 hats and all of those sort of design thinking ideas. But, and again, it brings in this element of play and fun, which I'm going to keep banging on about because Bobby was so excited about. We finally got to do our episode on play, because I do think that there has to be an element of playfulness and fun and just a different way of approaching things. And it does, as you say, people start to enjoy the process rather than it being, okay, so this is how we do it and this is what we do. We do this every day and we've always done it this way. That actually, if you just get a rebel come in who goes, how about we just don't do that? And then suddenly people realize that they don't have to do that. And then they get the freedom to start to think differently. And I think it's amazing watching that happen in a team, particularly, is when people who have been so used to doing things in one particular way, that when someone comes in, and particularly as a leader, because often it's very difficult to try and bring that in if you're not the leader, is the leader comes in and goes, how about we just don't do that? Have you ever thought about doing it, but just not talked about it before? Have you ever wondered? And then suddenly people get this it brings joy back into a job as well, I think. Because there's nothing worse than having a job where there is literally no joy. Even hard jobs, you look at, where I'm working at the moment in sort of security, in humanitarian fields, in conflict zones, and you look at doctors and you look at firefighters and trauma surgeons and nurses and teachers who often, I think, are in a battlefield. But all of those people, the ones who survive are the ones who find some fun and joy in it, even if it's very black humor, which is totally inappropriate, and that, you'd never share with anyone who wasn't in the same situation as you. But unless you can find that, I think that it becomes very hard to keep doing your job.
And I think that's it. But as the leader, it's giving people that permission to be themselves and bring themselves to the team, whatever it is that they have to bring to the team. And I remember when we were split into groups on one team or a project we were doing, we were split into teams, and then we had to deliver the outcome or the solution that we'd come up with in our little teams. And I stood there and I said, I am going to deliver our results in the medium of jazz. And they went, oh, okay. And I went, no, I'm joking. And I think going back to that beginning bit about authentic, why I didn't like authentic, and maybe it is because authentic was the big grown-up word for being yourself. But I'd rather say it's me being myself. And this is me.
Wendy, on that note, thank you so much for all of that wise woman wisdom. You know what I mean? From your crone wisdom, we love it. So, my darling, thank you so much for taking the time. I really, really appreciate all of those words.
Oh, I've loved it. I've loved chatting to you. This is great. It's great. We shouldn't just do it once a year in November. We need to do more and more.
Yes, get the cultivolvers out there.
Bobby's going to kill you.
Yes, she is.
Oh my God. Bobby, it was bridge. I did nothing.
It's always me. It's always me. I really, really appreciate it. Take care.
You. And you. Stay safe.
Bye. Bye. Thanks for listening. You'll find all of the links to the resources on our website and on the podcast page. We'll be continuing our Guests with Gifts for the next couple of weeks, so we'll see you then. Bye.